Welcome to Long Live Alternative Parties podcast. Today, friends, we have another exciting guest on our podcast like we tend to. He's with one of our favorite parties. His name is Steve Feldman, and he's running for Congress with the Libertarian Party of North Carolina. So welcome to the podcast, Steve.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
We're glad to have you. If we get started by you kindly giving us an introduction to yourself, a brief biographical sketch.
Oh, I'm a Jewish-American doctor. I'm a dermatologist working in North Carolina. I see patients and I do research. I'm an international expert on psoriasis and on the field of dermatology. Some of my research has been on how to encourage patients to take their medicines better. And
wow.
on the side, I'm a little amateur magician, too.
Magician, wow, interesting. So you do performances, is it for kids or for adults, or what is it for?
For anybody who's willing to put up with watching me do it, yeah.
Okay, interesting. So how does your magician activities and as well as your doctor stuff, how does that inform your politics?
Oh, that's a really good question. So the magic stuff, it's parallel to a fundamental principle that what we see is not always what other people see, even when we're looking at the same thing.
Yes.
What we bring to it affects how we perceive things. And certainly medicine has taught me that as well. Patients may perceive their rash very differently than I perceive it. And, being a psoriasis specialist with all these new drugs that you see advertised on TV, I've gotten to interact with people at pharmaceutical companies, other doctors, insurers, patients. And what I have found is that each group might tell me that the folks in the other group are evil and have evil intent. And then when I go talk to the people in the other group, they think they're the good guys, and the other folks are the problems causing conflicts and all. And so I have a very upbeat view of the world, very optimistic perceptions of people in other groups that I think informs my politics as well.
Great. Some people say the same thing for politics, that people view themselves as virtuous and they view their opponents as full of vice.
I don't even want to think about the other people running as opponents anymore.
Oh,
I think
okay.
we're all good, well-meaning people who want to make our country better, who want to help others. And the vitriol we hear between the major parties is just tearing folks apart, and we don't need it. We have, even on the most contentious issues, we have people on both sides who want to make the world better and who may differ in their policies for how to get there, but their ultimate goals are generally to help people.
Okay. So what led you to the Libertarian Party?
Well, I'm a big believer in being fiscally responsible and in letting people live their lives the way they want to live it. And I was a Republican. I'd vote for whoever I thought was the best candidate. So I wasn't any, pure team-based voter, but I was a registered Republican until 2016 when the Republican Party nominated somebody for president who I thought was inconsistent with our moral values. And so I happened by a Libertarian Party booth at our regional state fair and took the political test, which I think if most people take, they would find they were libertarian, thinking that, we should have some fiscal responsibility in our government and not have government tell us what to do. The fundamental focus of the Libertarian Party, I believe, is to let other people live their lives the way they want, as long as they're not hurting other people. I think this is a good philosophy. And the way I believe is it's not a selfish philosophy that says, I don't want the government telling me what to do. I think of it as a very humble philosophy of, if I were an elected official, I would be humble enough not to think that I knew best for other people, that I wouldn't want to tell people how to live their lives. They need to make those choices themselves, and this is really important, also take personal responsibility for the consequences of the choices they make.
Two sides of the same coin, responsibility and choice, right?
So liberty, the liberty that the Libertarian Party would offer comes with personal responsibility. It's kind of like what Peter Parker's uncle told him in Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. If the government isn't going to tell you how to lead your life, if you get to decide for yourself, which is, I think, the way it should be, that's a great freedom, but it comes with the responsibility to make good choices. I would love to see a world, a country where our government didn't tell us what drugs we could or couldn't put into our system. That said, I'm not going to do drugs. I wouldn't encourage somebody to do drugs, but I think it should be a person's own choice, not the government telling us what to do.
And like other people would say that said on this podcast about drugs in particular, if they do take drugs and they do something bad, then they can't say, it's not my fault. They have to take responsibility for it, right?
That's right. I think it's not the taking the drugs that's the crime. It's doing something because of because they're impaired that is the crime.
Yes.
We've got this with alcohol. You're free to drink, but if you kill somebody through drunk driving, that's your fault.
Yeah.
You have to take responsibility for your actions. We don't
Sure.
need to criminalize the alcohol. We criminalize doing bad stuff while on alcohol, and we could do the same for other drugs.
Makes sense. So can you please tell us more about the position you're running for?
Yes, I'm running for U.S. House in North Carolina's 10th Congressional District. It encompasses much of Winston-Salem, North Carolina, which is a fairly liberal blue area, and then 4 other counties that are thoroughly red and I think it's organized that way because of gerrymandering here in North Carolina.
Okay. So your district is a mix of red and blue?
Very much so, like America.
Okay. So Winston-Salem is a city, and some of your places sounds like they're rural areas, so it's also a mix of rural and urban, right?
Yes.
Okay, so how are you getting around to the different areas in your county? It sounds like, I'm sorry, not your county, your district. It sounds like it may be because of gerrymandering, it might be hard to get around everywhere.
It's a reasonably big district, although I imagine for your listeners who are in, say, North Dakota, they'd be like, you're calling that a big district? People's perceptions are based on what they bring to it. I ran 2 years ago, and I visited much of our district in my well-wrapped Ford F-150 Lightning. And this time, I hope to reach people more electronically.
Okay, I see. So like social media and through your website?
That's exactly right.
Okay, sounds good. So do you care to tell us about your opponent? Some of our guests don't like to talk about their opponent, some do. So if you're willing to share your perception of your opponent. That's right, you said at the beginning of the show that you don't believe in opponents, right?
That's right. I think we've got 3 really good people in this race. I don't even want to think about it as a race. 3 good people for the electorate in our district to choose from. We have a Democrat who is a physician assistant. She's dedicated to her life to making other people's lives better. She's passionate about reforming our healthcare system so that so Americans can all benefit from the outstanding developments we've had in medicine. And I think she realizes the system is broken and that people are frustrated by insurance issues and prior authorizations and not being able to get the care they need.
Okay.
She'd be a wonderful choice. She also stands firmly against killing people in other countries, which I greatly respect. I think, I'm a Jewish American, but I recognize that what Israel has done in the past and continues to do to Christian and Muslim Palestinian families has been really horrific and very much against all of our moral values. And the Democrat in this race, I think, feels strongly the same way in that regard, as having seen her website. The Republican in the race, I am certain, wants peace just as much as I do, maybe more.
Okay.
He was in the military. I think he was a Green Beret. He's a gun manufacturer, and I'm quite sure he believes those guns that he's making are there to protect people. I'm pretty sure that you should talk to other folks. Don't listen to me, but you don't want to listen to people badmouth other folks. You want to hear from them. But hopefully I'm saying things that he would believe.
Okay.
I think he's pro-peace, but I believe he thinks you get to peace by cutting off the head of the snake, by killing the evil people in the other countries who want to do us harm. And I think that's where he and I would disagree. We both want peace, but I think you get to peace by being peaceful, not by, slaughtering other people's children, and everybody is somebody else's child. So right now, he is one of the leading figures, I think, who promotes our war with Iran, which I think is a big mistake.
Okay.
Too few people in America, I think, know the history of how the United States and Britain worked to overthrow the democratically elected prime minister of Iran in the 1950s and to install a dictator in their country so that we could maintain access to their oil. We helped create and support that dictator's secret police force, the dreaded Savak. We even gave Saddam Hussein the satellite intelligence he needed to target Iranian forces with chemical weapons. And it's such a small world. You can read about the mustard gas injuries in the dermatology literature.
Oh, wow.
And then we imposed crippling sanctions on their country for decades, ruining their economy, making people suffer. And then we think it's weird that they, don't like our country. I mean, it's just, I've had the dermatology has been so good to me. I've gotten to travel around the world. The Iranians invited me twice to their dermatology meetings. I got to see, I got to visit Isfahan, where we've probably been bombing, and where they have all these amazing historic sites that are older than anything we have here in the United States, as long as you're not counting the Native American population. While I was there, one of the Iranians, when I'm visiting Isfahan, said to me, "Steve, you're Jewish, aren't you?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm Jewish." He says, "Steve, today is Saturday. There's a Jewish synagogue just down the street from here. Would you like I think they're in prayers now. Would you like to go?" And so I went down there. And you know how many guards they had at the door there? None. I think if you go to an American synagogue, you're going to find locked doors and a guard because they're afraid of the anti-Semites. In Iran, I didn't see any of that.
Wow.
I just walked right in. And I asked the guy, praying next to me, "Are things hard here in Iran?" He said, "Yes." And I said, "Is it because of the religious persecution?" He's like, "Religious persecution? No, it's because of the American sanctions on our economy." Those sanctions that we impose on people hurt people terribly. And our country is a great country. We have high morals. We're founded on a terrific moral basis, except for slavery. And we are well-meaning, and I know Americans want to help the Iranian people. But I think installing a dictator in their country helping Saddam Hussein use chemical weapons, all those sanctions is the wrong way to help people. I think we should apologize for the past, end our war, and live together in peace with other people.
Okay. So do you think that Trump is too far into this to be talked out of?
One of the good things about Trump is he can turn on a dime, right? The tariffs he imposes come and go on a whim. So, yeah, he went in there, I suspect, on a whim. I don't know. I think he was well-meaning. I think Netanyahu, convinced him that it was time to help the Iranians and help Israel by taking out the Iranian leadership and replacing them. And I think Trump was probably well-meaning, but I think, gosh, I'm pretty sure anybody would have told him the world economy is going to suffer because of this. Oil prices are going to go up because the Iranians are going to close that strait. I mean, everybody could have predicted this, and now, seeing that it's happened, I think Trump being very pragmatic may go, we got to open this up. I don't want gas prices to be high. I'll lose in the midterm elections what support I have if we don't end this. So I think he's quite capable of turning around and realizing this was all a big mistake.
Okay. So what other issues are concerns of the constituents in your district?
Well, I think gas prices are probably a big consideration for them right now.
Okay.
I don't know that fiscal sanity in Washington is at top of their mind. I don't know if the federal deficit is of their major concern, but it is a major concern of mine, and I want to do what I can to make sure the constituents in North Carolina's 10th realize that what we're doing now is horrific in terms of we're going to leave our children a bankrupt country. The deficit that well-meaning Republicans who don't like deficits passed $2 trillion deficit. That's $2,000 billion deficit in just 1 year. We're up to roughly $40,000 billion in deficits, in total debt, that we're going to hand our kids. This is, I believe, totally unacceptable. You asked about the folks who are also in this race for this district. Representative Harrigan, he voted for a $2 trillion deficit. I'm certain he wants a balanced budget, but the way they're going about it, each side blaming the other, I think is wrong. There's some really great wisdom from this Vietnamese Buddhist monk who once said, if the lettuce is not growing well, don't blame the lettuce. Take personal responsibility. We need our legislators to be more civil to each other, to work together. And it may be that neither the Republicans nor the Democrats will ever, deal with this budget problem. And so it may be a really good time to vote for some third-party candidates who are willing to do what needs to be done and make a lot of people angry for cutting, the spending, and then throw us out and go back to the Republicans and Democrats after we solve this fiscal problem. Representative Harrigan is really worried about our future, worried about the Chinese, worried that the Chinese own general nutrition stores on Army bases, on U.S. Army bases. I don't know if that's a real problem or not. The real problem that faces the existential threat to our nation is not China. It's our own deficit spending. It's like they're like a teenager who can't control themselves with daddy's credit card.
Okay. So how do we, since we're in a big hole right now, how do we get out of this hole?
Oh, it's easy. It's easy to see what needs to be done anyway. What is the federal government spending almost all its money on? Well, defense spending, which Trump wants to increase, Medicare, which Trump doesn't want to touch, health programs, and Social Security, veterans benefits, and interest on the debt. That's like probably, I don't know, 85-90% of the budget is taken up by that. If you cut everything else, it's not going to solve our $2 trillion deficit. So we need, this is not going to make me any friends, by the way, but this is what needs to be done. We need to reform Social Security. We need to drastically reduce healthcare costs, and we need to reduce defense spending. Let's take these in the opposite order. For defense spending, we're spending now as much as China, plus Russia, plus 7 other countries, all combined. We don't need to do that. We don't need to invade Iran. We need to defend our border, and that's it. And we can vastly reduce military spending if we focus on just defending our border.
Okay.
Next, let's do health care, because that's where the Democrat in this race and I agree we need to fix the system, but disagree on how we should get there. I believe that people need to be responsible for the cost of their own health care. We can give them high deductible health plans with, big health savings accounts, but they need to decide for themselves whether what they're spending is worth the money. I remember some years ago I had a patient who was well insured and who had psoriasis spots and just needed a cream. I offered the patient a choice of 3 options: an inexpensive generic topical steroid greasy ointment, or a much less messy $200 spray-on product, or an $800 combination drug that had a steroid plus some vitamin D in it. And they were well insured, so they weren't going to pay for it. Guess which one they chose?
The $800 one.
You're so close. They said to me, well, why don't you give me the $200 one and the $800 one, and I'll see which one I like better.
Wow.
Because somebody else was paying for it. If it was coming out of their own pocket, I'm pretty sure most people would have taken the $4 drug and said, hey, if I don't like it, if it doesn't work, then I'll consider something else.
Sure.
In our third-party payment system, the prices are just insane and ridiculous. Imagine what would happen if the federal government said, eating should be a right, so we're going to make grocery stores more like our healthcare system, where we insure people so that they don't have to pay for their cost of their groceries. Well, the prices would skyrocket overnight. Everybody would be buying lobster from gold-plated tanks, and the uninsured people would go hungry. That's what we have in healthcare today. We need a system that relies on market forces to bring down the prices. As soon as we do that, as soon as patients start calling different doctors, different hospitals, to see who has the lowest prices, prices will come down, quality will improve. You won't have a third party telling you got to get prior authorization for this or not. The system will be simplified. It'll be much better, and it'll dramatically reduce federal health care costs. And then there's Social Security. That's the biggest, third rail of them all. It's where it's the biggest cost for the federal government. And I would say we probably, we almost certainly need to remove the cap that means that I stop paying Social Security taxes in April, because I'm a well-paid dermatologist, so I pay through a few months, the early months of the year, and then I don't have to pay anymore because there's a cap. Also, we need Social Security to make sure that poor elderly folks aren't eating dog food. That was the purpose of Social Security. But people like me, would make $60,000 a year in Social Security benefits. My wife's going to make another $50,000. That's $110,000 a year going to us, and we don't need the money. So I think we need to cap the benefits so that wealthy folks who don't need the money aren't taking up all of the expenses, because the federal government just doesn't have the money to pay for all this. And you could wonder, above a certain income level, maybe we shouldn't even give people anything in Social Security. But but, at least capping the benefits, taking away the cap on the payments, on what we pay in, would help. People need to know, they haven't been paying in all of their lives and have a bank account at the Social Security office with their name on it. When Social Security was started, there was no money, but people were getting benefits. It was probably something like, 30 workers, paying the benefits for each. There were 30 workers for each person receiving benefits when Social Security started. Now we're down to 2 or 3. It's a transfer of money from young, relatively non-wealthy people to right now primarily to older folks who actually have wealth. That's not a system that's designed for success.
Sure. So how about the issue of immigration? What do you think would be the ideal policy for our nation?
Well, that's a really good question. I'm going to start off with root causes. First of all, we need policies that don't make people in the south of our border feel like they need to abandon their homes, abandon their family, abandon their friends, abandon their language because things are so bad in order to move to the United States. So when we imposed sanctions on Venezuela that destroyed that country's economy and made life for people there horrendous out of a well-meaning goal of getting rid of their communist leader, we meant well, but to make the people there suffer, to make 1 million Venezuelans become refugees and want to move here was, it's insane for us at so many levels. First, we shouldn't be making other people suffer. If we want their government to change, hey, let's just have a government here that's a role model that other people would want to emulate. Let's not try to, ruin their lives to make them change their own government. Our drug policies, our drug war creates the cartels that create the violence in countries to our south that make life unlivable there and make people want to move here. NAFTA, free trade, meant that Mexican farm workers could not compete with American subsidized farms. And so what do those people who used to farm in Mexico do? They come to the United States as illegal immigrants to farm here. We have so many policies that create the problem we're trying to solve. We should fix all that and then defend the border. Yeah, I think we need immigration here in America. Immigrants are good for our country. I am like second or third generation. Second or third generation from immigrants to America. Immigrants have built this country. It's good, but they should come legally, and we should have a system of legal immigration where we know who's coming in. I think that something like that would have general widespread agreement from people here in America.
Okay, that sounds good. So, sounds like you would be opposed to what ICE is doing right now, right?
That's a really great question. So what ICE is doing, I think our picture of what ICE is doing is based primarily on outliers, on anecdotes. We don't see what's normal and everyday. We see the outliers. This is a fundamental principle for trying to understand the world. In medicine, I see patients every day, referred by family doctors who got the diagnosis wrong, they got the treatment wrong. Sometimes they give people treatments that make the skin problem worse. A lot of dermatologists think that family doctors don't know what the hell they're doing because of our experience. But here's the rub. Every time the family doctor makes the right diagnosis and prescribes the right therapy and the patient gets well, they don't send us the patient. So we may only be seeing 1 in 100 of their patients, maybe 1 in 1,000 of their patients. We're not seeing what their everyday is. So we must not draw judgments about them. I'm Jewish. What do I know about Catholic priests from reading the cover of the newspapers? Well, from reading the cover of the newspapers, they all look like pedophiles. They're not all pedophiles. You can get a warped impression. What do good Christian, caring, God-loving Christian Americans know about Muslims from reading the newspapers? Well, if they read the cover of the newspaper, and if they see the word Muslim, the next word is terrorist. There are not that many Muslims. They're not all terrorists. If 1 billion Muslims go to pray for peace on Friday, that's not news. You're not going to hear about any of them. You're just going to hear about the outliers. People get a very warped impression about people in these other groups. And so when you ask me, what do I think of what ICE is doing? I don't know about most of what ICE is doing. I've seen the outliers, and the outliers are bad, and we don't want those outlier things to happen. We don't want Americans killed by ICE officers. But, we need to be respectful to law enforcement officers, too, and not put ourselves in positions where there's conflict. I think we can probably be doing better, but I think we really need to be more civil to each other. I think the idea that all ICE officers are doing bad things and that Americans are being killed left and right all over America, I don't think that's an accurate perception of what's going on.
Okay.
And so I think we need to tone down the rhetoric.
Okay.
I think this, and another example, really good example of this rhetoric is school shootings. We have school shootings in America, and folks on the left will say, we need to take the guns. We need fewer guns here, in order to solve this problem. And the folks on the right don't care about children because they don't want to take the guns away. And the folks on the right are saying, we need to put more guns into schools to protect our kids. And the folks on the left don't care about children. And it's obvious they don't care about children because they don't want to protect the kids at school with guns. Look, I am certain Americans on the left and on the right care about the children. To suggest they don't creates more animosity, there's so much vitriol, one side versus the other. And I think that culture of anger and animosity is what is most contributing to the school shootings. I think our best solution for reducing school shootings is not to either put more guns in or take more guns out. I think the solution is to start being nicer to each other and reduce this culture, this violent culture we seem to be, that seems to be festering here.
So, speaking of outliers, would you also say that the people who are anti-immigrant, like Trump, they're also using outlier cases to give people a picture of what immigrants are?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think their perceptions are colored by that. I think Trump exacerbates it by focusing on those rare exceptions. And if you look overall at what the effect of immigration is on our economy, it's a help. I mean, immigrants start businesses and grow businesses at a faster rate than non-immigrants. But look, it's very reasonable that those immigrants should come, and they should come here legally, and we should, know who's coming and regulate, the immigration that occurs. But all in all, I think it's a net positive for our country. Look, what is the existential threat to our country right now? It's our lack of civility and our federal debt. And by having more people here, more immigrants who are working hard and who are buying things from other Americans, we grow our economy, and that will help us, increase our tax base and reduce our debt. Now,
Okay.
I think there are people who worry, well, gosh, aren't these immigrants using more? Isn't it costing us more than the benefit? No, I don't think that's true. I think the data support that it's not true. But to whatever extent it were true, that they're using medical care at the federal government's expense or Social Security, by controlling those programs, by making it so that it's not a free lunch for people to come here, I think that would alleviate a lot of people's concerns about immigration.
Okay, sounds good. So, Steve, how can our audience support you in your campaign?
Oh, well, I think I would encourage you to go to my website and look over the policy positions at my website and see if there's things you agree with. And if you want to make a small donation to the campaign, that's great. More importantly, I hope you will spread this message that Steve has of, a fresh air message of, look, if you're on the left, the people on the right are not bad folks. They are religious, caring people who donate to charity and who want to make the country better. And if you're on the right, don't complain that the left is trying to destroy our country. No, they're good, caring people who share similar values. They may prioritize those values differently, but we share similar values. We all want to make this country a better place. And by being civil to each other, man, we can make a big step forward in that direction. So please spread that message to others.
All right. Steve, we thank you for coming on the podcast today and talking about your campaign.
My pleasure. I thank you for making, candidates like me visible to your audience. Thank you so much.
Sure thing. We wish you all the best in your campaign and also everything else you do in your personal and professional life. Take care and all the best.
All the best.